Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Rudy, your host for today's webinar. It gives me immense pleasure welcoming you all to the live webinar on the theme of Enable Hybrid Cloud to Work for You with VMware Cloud Foundation. This webinar is hosted by Cyber Media Research in association with VMware. For the duration of presentation, all participants' line will be on listen-only mode. After the presentation, we will have a Q&A session. Your feedback is very important for us. Please submit your feedback at the end of the webinar. Now it's my pleasure to introduce you to the speaker, Mr. Anil Chopra, VP Research and Consulting, CMR. He will share his insights on the post-COVID priorities of Indian organization. Mr. Chopra, welcome to the program. You're now ready to begin.
Well, thank you, Rudy, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us in on this webinar today. I'll spend about 10 minutes or so talking about how this current pandemic has completely changed the market behavior and how the cloud has kind of moved up in the IT priorities of enterprises. So I'll spend about 10 minutes on that. Uh, Broadly, if you look at it, I mean, I think everyone knows how badly the current pandemic has, shaken the status quo of the global economy. It's actually made it really difficult to do business, and with offices closed due to so many either government restrictions, employees' own fear of going out, or even organizations are also very sensitive towards that and making sure that their employees are safe. But as they say, you shouldn't really let any good crisis go to waste. So a lot of companies are actually busy now reinventing their business models amidst all these challenges and changing consumer behavior. IT and business priorities are also changing, with a lot more focus going towards doing things virtually to cater to a more tech savvy customer, because customers have also become smarter, they've also become more tech savvy, and it's important to kind of understand what your IT and business priorities are to cater to them. Now, traditional IT at this stage, will have its own limitations in being able to serve the needs of this growing digital population. What's really needed is a new and strong foundation of IT so that companies can, do the much needed innovation with far greater agility, flexibility, and security. Now, we did, a study. CMR, does so many market research surveys, and we did a, study some months ago, and then we recently conducted a study, and we found, several differences in some of the top business priorities and business objectives that, the pandemic has actually brought. It has completely changed the status quo. So while a few months ago, some of the business objectives were, as shown on the left, to accelerate the speed of deployment, or to, improve business profitability, or accelerate speed and ease of application development process and gain a strategic advantage. Now there's a lot more focus on, you know, how on the, speed up digital transformation, and to kind of look at, employee experience and productivity as a key focus area. How can you actually get them to be more productive while working from home, and ensure that they have the right experience so that they can be more productive. Looking at business continuity plan, because that suddenly business came to a standstill. So I think companies are still kind of looking at ensuring that they can have their business going, and how do you really keep it running. So what should the plan be like, and so on and so forth. And of course, rethinking business models for the new normal to be able to adjust to that. Now, organizations need IT really to focus on responding to dynamic business needs, because business did come to a standstill, and there's so many different changes and dynamics happening in the market. So being able to use IT to respond to such dynamic business needs was the greatest challenge that actually emerged in one of CMR's studies as a result of this. And for that, IT has to ensure business continuity, and that also becomes a very key objective for enterprises. uh, Many of them have actually, therefore, if you'll notice, and I'm sure that some of you would also have done it, to revisit your BCP documents during this time, to simplify them and make them more implementable, rather than just having documents for tick mark and the list of compliance norms, it's important to kind of look at the document and make sure that it's working properly. It's, you can follow the document, because business continuity has become essential today. In other words, and of course, there's a focus on using IT to kind of improve operational efficiency. That's been another key challenge that a lot of companies have been facing. And, there are many companies or many examples that we've seen, during this time, who've actually kind of completely dumped their old methods and cycles of releasing, say, a mobile app in the market, and, kind of shortening the life cycle so that they can be quickly out in the market, and which would otherwise take them months and quarters, they've been able to achieve in just a few weeks. So in other words, companies have really need greater agility, flexibility, and availability of their IT to be able to do all these things, and that's a key requirement, I think. Now, in order to do that, what do you really do? So what are the IT priorities that companies are really looking at to be able to achieve all these levels of flexibility, availability, scalability, and all that? So, again, a CMR study indicates that cloud adoption and IT automation are the top two IT priority areas of enterprises for this post-COVID era. And of course, they are followed by priorities emerging out of the need to enable employees to work from home, security and compliance, enhanced remote collaboration, device security, ensuring application availability, etc. So I think these are some of the priorities that IT priorities that we discovered that a lot of companies are now having in the post-COVID world. Now, in this thing, for enterprises who already have their own data centers and elaborate on-prem setups, moving to a hybrid multi-cloud environment is the way to go, because it's, because of the anytime, anywhere availability. It's dynamic, it has more scalability, it's efficient. There are so many other advantages that, this cloud is concerned with, security, reliability, for the on-prem infrastructure, which in most cases is virtualized. Okay. So it would also, companies would also look at a private cloud setup and so on. So I think that is where the move to a hybrid multi-cloud is really, really required. And it is actually, again, something that another study has indicated, where, it is actually becoming the norm amongst enterprises, where, the data again indicates that about 95% of Indian enterprises have said that they'd like to increase their cloud spending this year, and about 50% of the organizations will build in a, and operate in a hybrid multi-cloud environment by next year. And likewise, other associated elements of such an infrastructure will also be adopted, like containers, Kubernetes, unified VMs, and the processes to manage a multi-cloud processes. Adding to that, some other data suggests that applications, storage, databases, and security and testing as a service, as part of the security, they've already been migrated to the cloud in the percentages that are shown over here last year. And as far as hybrid IT strategy is concerned, these are some of the things that are included in the organization strategy to look at virtualization, private cloud, security becomes important, software-defined storage, and of course, lastly, moving to a public cloud. So I think those are some of the elements of the cloud that have become extremely essential now for organizations, and this is what really the study suggests that what companies are doing. And that's where I would the recommendations really come in, that given the current state of affairs, I think it's the best time to look at reinventing business models. I think as far as the CIOs or ITDMs are concerned, they must align their IT priorities with the changing business priorities of their organizations, because as I just indicated earlier, that the business priorities are changing. Organizations should really look at updating their legacy IT now, so that it can cater to the dynamic requirements of the market, and focus on technologies that can actually enable your employees to work from home, who've traditionally also been working from office, where so that's where some things like hybrid cloud comes in for anytime, anywhere access, and of course, looking at sales to be able to retrain them to be able to work virtually with customers, beefing up endpoint security, remote support, compliance, to kind of enhance the employee productivity while working from home. So I think those are some of the recommendations that I would have for in the post-COVID environment. And those are the things that I want to just really talk about. So thank you. And with that, I'd like to now hand it over to Amol P. Divanji. He's the head of solution engineering at VMware. Um, Amol will actually talk about VMware's cloud foundation that can actually be used to modernize your application infrastructure. Thank you, and over to you, Amol.
Hey, thanks, Neil. Thanks for those insights. And I found some points to be pertinent and relevant to discussion we are going to have for next possibly 40 to 45 minutes before we open up to the Q&A. Right? You spoke about enterprises wanting to move faster in their phase of digital transformation. Right? That's what even we are seeing now, given this COVID situation and things which are going to remain more or less not, I mean, they're not going to be the same again, right? So, the focus on being online rather than being physically present is, of course, is leading towards digital transformation. And some points regarding what you made around mobile applications, mobile applications development, very pertinent. We're seeing now, especially banks, because I come from that sector, are actually moving towards rolling out the new application at a rapid pace. The third point which I noticed, which you also said, was around the hybrid cloud adoption. Right? I think in last 3 months we've seen a lot of organizations move that way. And if anybody has a doubt, you can actually go and refer to some independent articles on how AWS, or Azure, GCP performed over last quarter. Right? I mean, they've just posted fantastic results. The fact that customers are adopting cloud in a rapid fashion, right? So hello all, this is Amol Divanji. I lead the solution engineering team, or basically the pre-sales team or architects team at VMware, specifically for FSI vertical. That's where I work in. So moving ahead, and I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes on our strategy and vision, right? Because this is so important, and it just ties in beautifully to what I am going to dwell on for next 40 odd minutes, right? We all know about VMware, how they started off, right? I mean, 20 years back, we started off as a virtualization company, right? Something breaking, which happened, 20 years back. And if I reflect back, today this technology has actually become a backbone of digital foundation across all enterprises. I mean, whichever vertical I see, virtualization has become a backbone of digital foundation, right? And most of the organizations today run mission critical application. I mean, I work so closely with the banking fraternity, and I see them running critical application on VMware or any other virtualization. Earlier, it was only about test and UAT, but as the hypervisor became more and more mature, people started moving in critical application. Obviously, it brings in a lot of goodness from operational perspective and also the cost optimization perspective, right? So I have been at VMware for almost 3 years, and what you see on your screen is a vision strategy which was painted approximately 5 years back. So nothing has changed. We have evolved, right? I believe our vision and strategy of running any app, so be it application like SaaS, like 365, or be it a a cloud native application which you have built based on Kubernetes and Dockers, or be it a traditional monolithic application, right? Maybe something like a mobile banking application, for example, right? Uh, Today, we give you a flexibility to run it on any infrastructure, right? So be it your private data center, or be it a public or hyperscaler like AWS or Azure or Google, or clouds, right? So that's the flexibility which VMware technology provides, and the same can be consumed on any device. Today, if you really see, there are only two operating environments on the consumer side, right? The first one is, of course, Windows. The second one is Mac. And okay, maybe I'm a little wrong. There is a third environment, which is Chrome as well. Not so popular, but it's also kind of picking up, right? So basically, we offer a way to consume these applications via any cloud, any application, any device strategy, right? So if you really see any effort in infrastructure starts with application, right? So that's the focus, and that's why you see that middle layer being super critical from VMware perspective, right? Uh, and basically, our strategy is pretty simple. How do you build applications, right? Meaning to say, how are you developing those applications? How will you run them? How will you manage them? How will you connect to them? And how will you protect them? So these are the five pillars on which our strategy is based on. Build, run, manage, connect, and protect, right? Today we are going to talk about cloud foundation solution, right? Which essentially is nothing but virtualization of your compute, storage, and network aspects with a layer of operational management and a layer of automation, right? So this is what vCloud Foundation is, or the Cloud Foundation is all about, right? What we've done really, if you see at the bottom of the slide, how do we enable this hybrid cloud, or how do we enable your journey to the public clouds or hyperscalers, is by having the same model, or vCloud Foundation across all these clouds. So on your private side of things, you can of course deploy this vCloud Foundation model. But today this model is also available across all the hyperscalers. And we will dwell more on that. But just to give you some sense, today there with AWS, Azure, Google, Oracle, IBM, right, and host of other partners like NextGen, SIFI, the local India cloud players, right? So that's essentially what we are going to talk on today. So modern infrastructure is changing, right? And VMware and vSphere have probably dominated this for years, but there are fundamental shifts in happening in world of the way you build application and run those applications, right? And one such shift is containers, right? And container enable a new type of application architecture called microservices. That actually helps you to be more agile, to be honest, right? And containers is not something which is very new, right? I started my career way back in Sun Microsystems, in early 2000. We used to have container concept back then with Solaris, right? Of course, things were, I mean, containers was not very popular that time, but today we see that, this is picked up really, really well, right? So this is something which allows you to be more agile. So currently, if you see, containers are today, I mean, if there is an application which is developed with those principles of cloud native, 12-factor principles or 15-factor principles of developing, cloud native application, you will mostly see them being developed on hyperscalers like Amazon or Google or Azure, right? But vast majority of enterprise applications are still on-prem. So if you reflect back to your application set, you will see the money spinning applications, or where your business counts on, are actually on premise, and there are very few applications which today based on microservices principle, and mostly they are there on cloud, right? So the point is, all this vast majority of applications which are on premise, I mean, are you going to just shift them onto cloud? The answer is obviously no. I mean, it is not a feasible. B, it is going to be extremely expensive as well, right? So today we need a way to basically take these monolith applications, which are money churners for you, and figure out a way how to modernize them, right? And maybe also decide a strategy whether you want to move to cloud, or whether it makes sense to run it on premise. And I am sure if you are in banking world, maybe you would prefer some applications to be running on premise, right? And of course there are some applications which absolutely make a great business case to run on cloud, right? So uh, you know moving on, if you really see and if you really delve on what are the challenges, typical challenges in modern applications, right? What are challenges from developer perspective? Is somebody okay? Is my voice audible to all? Hello, can I just get a quick feedback? Is the voice, hello, am I audible? Anil or
Sir,
Rudy?
it's breaking. Sir, it's breaking.
It's breaking. Is it good now?
No, sir, still the same.
Please hold on. Rudy, can you confirm if it is any better?
It's much better now, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So what are the challenges in modern applications, right? Challenges from the developer perspective or IT operator perspective, you can see them on screen, right? See, in the olden times, like I said, we all started off with virtualization, VMware, and there is a host of tools or tooling around for both developer and IT operators. Moving into Kubernetes world, obviously it's not going to be so easy, right? There are different tool sets, and there will be struggle, right? So the entire exercise or the philosophy behind coming up with something called as vCloud Foundation, and you will realize it moving further in the presentation, is to make this problem statement disappear or make it much more easy and palatable for both developers and IT operators to work on a common set of tooling and make life easier for them as it was before with the VMs or the virtual environments. So that's the premise really. So, what,
Sir, your network is dropping out, sir. It's still cracking. The voice is cracking again, sir.
Actually, I've just switched on, on another Wi-Fi. Is this better now?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So, coming back to the topic, vCloud Foundation for really deliver. It will deliver the hyper-speed Kubernetes, right? It provides you with a full stack HCI platform for both virtual machines and containers. So please remember, when you move to the modern apps world, it is not as if all the components of your applications are going to be suddenly available as microservices. For example, every application is backed up by a data, not backed up, sorry, it relies on a database at the data layer or at the persistence layer. Can that really move into realm of a modern app and be provided as a microservice today? The answer is mostly no. Yes, people are working towards it, but today the answer is no, right? You still have a data persistence or layer in your entire application today. Just it will still run on a traditional VM, right? While you will be able to create microservices out of your web application, right, or your or your app tier, right? You still will have databases running on the traditional virtual machines, right? So having a capability to run both virtual machines and microservices on single platform is a big benefit, right? And all this provides agility, flexibility, and security which are required for modern applications, right? Kubernetes along with Dockers, I mean, when you talk about the runtime, when you talk about Dockers or containers, right? Please bear in mind, these are not the complete operating system images, right? This will basically run the required library. So it's a trimmed down version. So obviously, how do you ensure the security? So with this platform, actually, we are also ensuring that the security is not compromised, right? And of course, an ability to rapidly deploy new application and microservices. Anil spoke about how rapidly people want to, adopt to change and deploy the new versions of their application. So basically, that's the entire philosophy around building a cloud native application based on Kubernetes and containers. moving on, right? vCloud, VMware Cloud Foundation 4, right? So basically, like I said, the idea here is really to accelerate development of modern applications that automate the deployment and lifecycle management of complex Kubernetes environments. Right? So if I really look at infrastructure up, right, it is about IT operator admins to have a complete visibility and control of virtualized compute, network, storage, infrastructure resources through this model, which is VCF, right, working within the server. So things like vSphere, our SDN platform, which is called as NSX, or the storage virtualized platform, which is vSAN, and the automation and operational framework, which is our vRealize suite, is all deployed and automated via this VCF, right? And if I look at application down, right, so developers should also have a frictionless access to Kubernetes development environments and infrastructure resources via the same VCF services. So obviously they want the infrastructure to be invisible. So what basically VCF services consist of is Tanzu, which is our modern app portfolio. We call it Tanzu, right? So basically runtime services, hybrid infrastructure services that are delivered via Kubernetes and RESTful APIs, right? So that's basically both the views, right? If I look at infrastructure up, basically, your IT admin's view, and, application down, which is developers view, we have a rich, tool set available for both to consume. So this is how traditionally developers consume Kubernetes, right? They write something called as infrastructure as code, and how do they write it? They write it in YAML, right? So these are the files which they create for the infrastructure, right? And these are all basically, this is what is declarative infrastructure, right? Basically, YAML files show developers can use kubectl. I mean, I'm not sure how many people are today familiar with how Kubernetes runs, but Kubernetes relies on a CLI called kubectl, right? So basically using that kubectl interface, which your developers will be very much familiar with, you create that declarative infrastructure, and deploy your applications on top of it, right? So the VCF construct which you are talking about supports this entirely, right? So we support, we support the declarative infrastructure and infrastructure as a code. So that's the intent behind vCloud Foundation. So instead of admins can now focus on applications, right? So one of the major changes which we have done with vCloud Foundation 4, right, is change the way the administrator or IT operators really look at this. Earlier, all the actions were performed on the VM level, right? With vCloud Foundation 4, first of all, the first major change is you'll have something called as vSphere 7 for compute virtualization. So all those who are familiar with vSphere, I'm sure you must have in some form or other, may have been from vSphere 5.5 till vSphere 6.7. 7.0 is the latest and the greatest version of vSphere. So it comes with vSphere 7, right? So what it will change is the way you manage via vCenter. Now you'll be able to manage on the application, right? So you will be able to perform all the operations on a specific application. So you don't have to really look at the VMs, right? You say that this application, I'm going to do XYZ thing. So you are going to set quota, you're going to do maybe, a role-based access for your developers, you're going to apply all the policies, and everything now you're going to do on app level, right? You're not going to do anything on, VM level. Now everything will move to app level, right? And you will also apply vSphere features, like for example, high availability, vMotion, DRS, everything is going to happen at the app level, right? And this stays true for both VMs as well as containers, obviously, right? So you have a unified visibility in vCenter for Kubernetes clusters, containers, and existing virtual machines. So vSphere, with Kubernetes. So basically, vSphere 7 comes with Kubernetes built in, does two things, right? So please remember, right? When we talk about vSphere, we are talking only about vSphere 4.0 in this webinar, right? And vSphere 4.0 comes with vSphere 7, and vSphere 7 has got Kubernetes inbuilt inside it, inside the control plane of vCenter, right? So vSphere comes with Kubernetes, and it does two things, right? It brings in Kubernetes awareness to vSphere itself. It also bridges the gap between IT operations and developers. So IT operators continue to provision, view, view and monitor their virtual infrastructure as they would have always done. But now with Kubernetes awareness and insight, that has eluded them in the past, right? Developers can now deploy Kubernetes and container-based workloads directly on vSphere using the same methods and tools they have always used in public cloud. vSphere with Kubernetes also provides flexibility, as developers can choose to run pods native to ESXi or inside purpose-built Kubernetes cluster hosted on top of something which we are familiar with called namespace, right? On top of this VCF, right? So what do I mean by really running the pods native to ESXi? What I simply mean by that is you can run these pods or containers on the hypervisor itself, right? You don't require a operating environment, right? Traditionally, whatever Docker or anything you would have seen requires a runtime and of course an operating environment, right? You would have some form of Linux. So that is not required. So that's what running on a native pod means, right? So you run pod native to the hypervisor. And second, of course, you can choose to deploy it on any Kubernetes distribution, right? So you may have your own solution. Say, for example, if you are using a Red Hat OpenShift, right, that can also be potentially be deployed on a virtual machine or basically vSphere on top of vSphere and vRun, right? So these are the two options before you. So basically, both the teams benefit and can collaborate in a better fashion with this vCloud Foundation 4. And actually, what enables it is the v7 construct. So yeah, so this is what the vCloud Foundation is all about. So what we've spoken for so far is basically it's a virtualization which is vSphere 7, right, on the compute. So if you can see my screen, how is compute virtualized using vSphere 7? How is storage virtualized? It is using the vSAN technology or our HCI technology. And how is network virtualized? It's using our NSX layer, right? So these are the three main construct. On top of it, you see automation and operations, right? So of course, people again familiar with VMware environments or who are running VMware environments, VROps, which is our operational suite, and vRealize automation, which gives the automation on top of it, right? And of course, with intrinsic security built in via the NSX layer. So NSX today not only enables you to run things like microsegmentation, which is effectively a great security posture to have, but also enables you to do much more than that. It also enables things like IPS, IDS now. So of course that's a completely different topic, and we can possibly spend hours on top of it. But today NSX does much more than just providing services from L2 to L7. I mean, of course it does switching, routing, load balancing, but it also does distributed firewall, which is microsegmentation. It also does IPS, IDS, right? So imagine instead of having those bulky devices on the edge, you today can have an ability to deploy IPS IDS on your virtual machine. So that's the power which we are bringing down to with network our NSX layer inside the SDN which we are talking about, right? And of course, the NSX layer is also cognizant of the container or Kubernetes environment, and it integrates with it beautifully, because you will require all those constructs even in the modern app space. You'll still require a load balancer to be spun off. In fact, multiple load balancer, right? You still be having pod level microsegmentation policy, you may not want one pod to talk to another. How do you achieve that, right? So NSX has got ways and means to achieve it really. So, we spoke about the entire stack. So what does really vCloud Foundation mean? And I just wanted to highlight where we stand from even the component standpoint, right? So vSphere, our hypervisor, right, has the number one. It's number one in market share. Of course, tons and tons of customers. I need not speak about it. 80+% market share. When it comes to vSAN, HCI offering, storage, right? Again, in HCI world, about 20,000 plus customers, global footprint, and so many cloud partners, right? All the hyperscalers today, which I spoke of, where you will be running, basically essentially the VCF construct for your hybrid cloud or multi-cloud options today run HCI based on vSAN. And NSX, of course, enables that ubiquitous layer across your private and public cloud. It's one layer that tries this, from the networking standpoint. We realize, of course, we are, number one from the cloud, perspective. We have more than 40,000 customers in banking itself today. I'm really proud to say that we've got so many customers running our automation and operational framework, right? So many banks have benefited by our automation framework, right? So which is essentially the vRealize suite. So while HCI is the flavor of the day, and I'm sure most of you are either running HCI or probably evaluating it. But one of the the most powerful and unique things which VMware can do is actually just work with your existing brownfield storage and servers, right? So that's also where what we can do is we can just pull up this new generation HCIs along with your probably existing storages which you may have purchased 2-3 years ago and still have life of another 5-6 years. Yeah, so we can just pull them and use them under a single cloud. So that's the power, right? And with VCF, we really didn't want to break it. While it is a prescriptive architecture with compute, storage, and networking virtualized, we don't want to be prescriptive and saying that you can only use HCI, right? What we've really gone ahead and integrated with VCF 4.0 is ability to now plug in external SAN to this VCF, right? So that reference architecture is also rolled out, and we allow customers to attach the external SAN to it. Of course, there are ways and means how you can do it, right? So if you have any IBM Dell EMC storage, you can attach it to it and use a technology called as vWall. What is vWall? vWall is something which lets you use your SAN but give you the same benefits what a vSAN or an HCI provides, right? Today our HCI, one of the unique points in VMware HCI is ability to define SLAs on per VM, right? We call it SPBM, or storage policies which we set on a particular VM. So the same thing you can now do it using vWall. The same SPBM policies can now be applied to a VM or a VMDK when you publish your storage not as standard, but if you push it as a vWall, you can achieve the same thing. So you can get or you can define the SPVM policies on VMDK, right? So that's how you can integrate it. Of course, there are other options. You can you can also publish it as VMFS or NFS store. So we give you that full flexibility to utilize your existing assets and not just HCI. So this is just the software bill of materials which is associated from VCF perspective. Of course, there are additions and SKUs, which if you have questions, you can of course reach out to us and we can explain you in much more detail. But essentially, like I said, what it contains is NSX for network virtualization, vSAN for storage, vSphere for compute virtualization. On top of it, like I said, operational layer and automation layer. What is this actually? Operational and operational and automation layer is basically VROps, It is a log insight for those log analysis and analytics view to troubleshoot. It also gives you VRNI. VRNI gives you the network insight. It tells you, for example, how your application is communicating with other applications. There are some beautiful dashboards and reports which VRNI can throw you, and give you so much intelligence from application perspective. Which port it is talking on, how many applications it is chatting with. I mean, if you look at your legacy application, sometimes let's take for example, you want to move an application to cloud. How do you move it? You don't even know to which all services it is really talking to. Right? VRNI can do that for you, right? It can just throw you a dashboard, show you, this application talking on this port with this application, what all it is accessing. It gives all that so beautifully, right? So that's what basically the operational layer and automation means for you. Of course, automation means building those workflows, approvals, building in those third-party integrations. Like for example, you want to integrate backup, you want to integrate something like a Qualys guard for your compliance. So many use cases, right? The automation framework is so open, right? Today, with my automation platform, I can just drag and drop and create blueprints, right? Entire blueprints. I can create a blueprint to be deployed on AWS. I can create a blueprint to be deployed on Azure for their native services, right? Extremely powerful tool, and gives you that entire, just drag and drop on dashboard and build out those blueprints, right? Extremely powerful, solution. Instead of, if I again were to just double click it, instead of creating those, standard templates, say for example, Windows 2000 for Apache. So, Linux for Apache, Linux for XYZ application. Instead of building so many templates, you just build a blueprint, right? Make life easy for your operations side. Extremely powerful tool. And on top of it, there is something called as SDDC Manager. Now, what it does is it actually makes your day to life very, very simple, right? And this is how it makes it simple, right? So lifecycle management is another challenge which VCF addresses beautifully, right? People familiar with the VMware environment or any environment for that matter, that when you set up the infrastructure, probably that's once in a quarter or once in a half year thing, right? You purchase more server, you give those VMs and all that. It's not a regular task, right? But patching, upgrading are daunting tasks in data center, and the risk of configuration drift and human error watch up your operations, right? So within Cloud Foundation, available updates for all components are tested for interoperability and then bundled with necessary logic for proper installation order. So what happens is that essentially with SDDC Manager, what I do is the next time an upgrade comes, right? Of course, an upgrade and a patch will be applied across the stack, right? It is not only vSphere. It will be applied for vSphere, NSX, your HCI, your operational layer, automation layer. So it drops that upgrade patch as a whole with a proper sequence as to how it should be upgraded, right? And this is fully tested and made sure that everything is interoperable, right? So it makes your life extremely easy from day to perspective. Even from the day zero perspective, when you're setting up this, and I will show you in some of the reference slides, we've made this very simple. You purchase all these as a la carte products, right? You'll have to go through the regular planning and designing exercise. You purchase it as VCF, right? It is just whatever the required fields, just click next, and it just comes up, right? It just does it in instead of the weeks typically require for the design effort, right? So that's what VCF also does very, very well. The other aspect which I wanted to just touch upon possibly in next 5 odd minutes before we move to the Q&A, maybe I've got another 10 minutes, right? Before we move to Q&A is it provides the foundation for hybrid cloud. So I told you in the first strategy and vision strategy slide that VCF as a construct is also deployed across hyperscalers. How do we really do or go about doing it, right? So of course we've spoken about the developer ready infrastructure, how that same Kubernetes. So with VCF 4.0, you have vSphere 7, which is with Kubernetes built in, right? So Kubernetes actually runs in the vCenter control plane itself. So we've got a developer ready. Same tools which developers use, that Cuttle, command line interface to create the infrastructure for them, or to basically, create pods and deploy them. The same infrastructure can use with VCF, right? A universal platform. The same platform can be used for VMs and containers. And of course, TCO is of course subjective. I don't want to dwell much into it. We can talk specific to case to case when we talk one on one. So yeah, so let's move to the hybrid foundation for hybrid use case. So this is basically what we're doing, right? So today, see on the left side, customer managed VCF, basically a private cloud deployment. Then we have something as a VMware managed deployment on cloud. So VMware managed deployment example is VMC on AWS, right? So that's a prime example. That's what we tied up with AWS. That's where our entire engineering effort has gone. There's so many R&D engineers working on this service along with AWS, and we've achieved some fantastic results in the short span of time. So today we can also provide partner managed vCloud provider program. What it essentially means, and the examples for that is basically what we've done with other hyperscalers, right? We've also gone ahead and deployed the same construct on Google Cloud, IBM Cloud, or Oracle Cloud, right? So this same VCF is today available also on these clouds, right? And of course, there are other partners as well, India-specific partners who have utilized this VCF construct and created their own cloud offering for customers like you, right? So we have all those options in front of you. You deploy in your data center and VMware managed cloud, which is essentially VMware on AWS, right? And we'll speak a little bit more on that. And of course, partner managed. We have so many other partners via which we deploy the same service. So speaking specifically about VMware Cloud on AWS, right? So basically, we bring in the enterprise class software-defined data center to the AWS cloud. So basically, the same construct which VCF I described earlier is also deployed on VMware Cloud. If you see this middle layer, vSphere, vSAN, NSX, right, which together make up VCF. The same thing which goes on VMware Cloud on AWS. So basically, this is running on AWS EC2 instances, right? So there is no there's no other hypervisor running. It's basically we are running on bare metal servers by AWS, right? And basically this is sold, operated, and supported by VMware. You can also, it has a flexible model. You can demand on your capacity, and it has got consumption patterns. You can sign up monthly, yearly, whatever, right? So it has same construct as you will find in a typical cloud. Right? The other big engineering which we have done is, of course, I'm sure you know, right? If you're a VMware customer, you know that our networking is on L2, L3, while the networking layer on AWS is very, very different. Right? But you see here NSX, right? So that's the marvel which our engineers joined with the AWS engineers. Also, the other thing is tying it back to the native.
Sir, your voice is dropping out, sir.
Yeah. Amol, we kind of lost you there for a while. So I think you'll have to repeat that last part.
Okay. So I'm saying the engineering is all about, how do we tie this back to the native service? Right? If you see here that, there is an arrow between this middle layer and the native services, which Amazon offers, right? S3, Lambda, Redshift. So basically, what we've worked on is a high-speed, low-latency interconnect between VMC on AWS, this service, and the native service. Example, we had and going live on the customer applications, right? So what they did essentially, the web and app layer to deploy on VMware Cloud on AWS. So they deployed it here, right? Initially, during the deployment time, they wanted to use Oracle database services. So what they did was they started using Oracle database services, or RDS, from here, right? And of course, they also got some benefit from the licensing perspective, and the overall TCO, was a game changer for them, because they could now start consuming what they want, right? Because this application had, of course, like any other application, went into phases, right? First, they started off with deployment, and there was UAT, pre-pod, and all the stages. So if they had done everything here on premise, they would have had to purchase everything with a 5-year TCO, right? That's what typically any bank or large organization would do, right? They would purchase everything based on a 5-year TCO or whatever, 3-year TCO, whatever works at your organization, right? So instead of that, what they started off was they purchased this service and started small, for development, UAT, and pre-pod first, right? And they started using services, web and app services, which are deployed here. And they started using the Amazon or the AWS RDS service for Oracle databases from here, right? And today they're on verge of going live. So the entire application is going to go live on VMware and Cloud on AWS. And we have so many fantastic, successes where people have used this for various things, right? The other big use case which I personally see is that, if you are a large organization, I'm sure you must have got a large VMware farm. Typically, we see people having all kinds of vSphere environments. I mean, right from vSphere 5.5 to the latest, right? And some still run older generation vSphere because of certain consideration, because it's an older hardware. The hardware doesn't support the latest vSphere releases, whatever, right? And you are in that phase of migration, because those all vSphere versions are EOSL now. We no longer support them. How do you migrate them, right? So this is one other great way of migration, or moving to cloud, right? You just simply, we give you tooling, and which I'll talk a little later, to migrate to VMC. So 5.5 environment, 6.0 environment, you can just move. And all this movement happens without a change in IP, right? Which, I'm sure people at bank are very, or your organization are scared about, right? Now, how do I move to cloud? If I move to cloud, will my IP change? What processes will be changed? Everything remains the same. The same, skill sets, your vSphere skill sets, your, whatever skill sets you've acquired on premise stays the same, because it's ultimately running on the same VMware environment here. No change in skill sets, right? You can move the VM as is, like you do a vMotion between servers on premise or within the cluster, right? You move that across. The same thing is what you will do in VMware Cloud on AWS. So if you've got an older, estate of 5.5, 6.0, right? This is a great way to move and adopt cloud. Right? Just move them. Of course, I'm sure there will be other challenges, like you have to see how the network chattiness is there, and how the application is really architected and all that. So we will, of course, can get into details, but that's one thing which is a great use case. DR as a service, right? You want to expand your data center, right? Designing a data center is not easy. It takes months, right? This is a great way to just expand your data center to AWS, VMware Cloud on AWS. And same thing, you can do across. So if you have other preference other than AWS, right, you can do it on Oracle, GCP, or Azure. Of course, Azure is scheduled sometime to come next year. Inside India, they are already live across the world, but Azure will come to India, next year. VMC on AWS is something which is running in India today. Oracle is running in India today, right? IBM is running in India today, right? So these are the options before you. And this is the tool which I was talking about. This is the magic sauce for moving towards hybrid world or multi-cloud world. HCX allows you to just pick up your, those hundreds or 200s or whatever, thousands of VMs, and just move them to the VMs or VMware Cloud on AWS, or VMware Cloud on Oracle, or VMware Cloud on IBM, wherever you want it to be, right? So that's the magic sauce which enables you. Basically, it does something akin to vMotion, right? So that's what it does. And having said that, I have kind of reached to end of my presentation. I'll just quickly take a minute to maybe give you some points where our customers have adopted VCF or vCloud Foundation and found immense benefit. These are, of course, the organizations outside, but we have so many in India as well, right? But of course, privacy and other things, I can't spell out those names, but we can, tell you how we are doing it in India as well. Right. So look at this, 3.5 days to deploy the full SDDC stack. That's the big benefit, right? That's the big benefit which this organization offers. see here again, 2 days to deploy versus 2 months on legacy, right? So that's what this financial services organization achieved, right? And DXC technology, right? I'm sure you know DXC, a very big SI, across India and the Western world, right? They chose VCF or vCloud Foundation for their VDI workload, right? And they essentially basically offer this as a service to their customers. But look at the speed to market, right? Deployed it in 3 days flat, right? So that's what they've done, right? And with this, I would like to end my presentation. I've already overshot by 4 minutes. So let's open it for Q&A, Rudy.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. Chopra. Thank you so much, Mr. Devanji. Sir, we have a couple of questions in the queue from different participants who have joined the call. So the first question is coming up from Mr. Siddharth Saxena. The question reads out as, can we have some real world case study implemented for containers?
Oh, sure. I mean, so many of them. In fact, Siddharth, while I can't really name the organizations, uh, I have, or me and between me and my team in FSI space or BFSI space in India, we have closed 3 large solutions in last 2 months. They're all involved, across very, very critical applications like internet banking, for example. And some are, of course, new applications which these banks or financial services institutes are bringing. There are a lot of examples. Connect me offline, and I will, maybe we will be happy to talk to you, right? But there are a lot of real-world examples. People are moving to Kubernetes for building something as critical as internet banking, data lakes, payments. Payments is one hot topic. Talk to any ISV in the payment space. Mostly they will have a plan to move to microservices very soon, or they're already on microservices journey.
Thank you so much. The next question is coming up from Mr. Manish Parikh. The question reads out as, is it correct to say that VCF is for containers and microservices? If yes, then what about traditional workloads?
Yeah, so I'm not sure, Manish, if you heard me. That's the USP of VCF, right? VCF has got ability to run both, traditional monolith VMs and containers side by side, right? Like I was saying, see, any application you take. So I just spoke about application like payment application. Let's take, for example, a UPI application, right? Is it possible to have all the entire UPI application as microservices? The answer is right now no, it's not feasible, right? You will still have an Oracle database which is sitting outside the realm of the microservices world, right? You'll still have that persistence layer outside. Of course, there will be some vendors who are thinking about moving it inside, right? So you will have your data persistence layer connected to a specific pod or a container, whatever lingo you want to use. But today, for most of the application modernization journey, the data persistence layer stays outside, right? And this is exactly what VCF does. I mean, it provides you a platform to run both VMs as well as containers, right? B, it provides you an operating model to manage both of them, right, simultaneously. And like I said, even if you want to develop and not deploy a regular, a COTS application, for example, the UPI is a COTS application given by some ISV vendor. If you are today in business of building an app, or your enterprise is thinking of building an application on Kubernetes and Docker, right, the popular runtime, the VCF provides you that developer friendly infrastructure as well. Like I said, the same tools what your developers are used to, right, are available with VCF on the same vSphere infrastructure, which your IT operators can manage. That's the benefit.
Thank you so much. Now I'm transferring out the rights to Mr. Anil Chopra and welcome him to the Q&A session. Mr. Chopra, please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Rudy. Couple of actually questions have been coming in from the audience. Now, there's a question from, I'm sorry if I don't pronounce your name correctly, but it's Thirumalamba Santosha. He has a question that as part of providing, declarative way of defining the required infrastructure, like via YAML or JSON files, etc. Do we have the support via Terraform as well? I mean, similar to, we have Terraform for Kubernetes, we have Terraform for Helm, etc.
You can integrate Terraform as well. I have not seen, I have seen one customer doing it. However, I'm not too privy to details as to how they're doing it really. But yeah, I mean, Terraform is, we have ways to integrate that. But slightly, I mean, we'll have to connect and explain you what exactly we do, right? It's not something which I can describe in a minute or two. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but yes, to answer your question, yes. I mean, just to put it flatly, yes. But what is possible, what is not possible, is something to dwell more in detail. Yes. Terraform is supported.
Okay. And there's a question from Karthikeyan SP and says that how do you really foresee the future formats and commonness of cloud formats for interoperability?
See, that's the challenge. I think so. You brought up a very relevant question. Formats, and I'm assuming here, of course, formats here means the format of a virtual machine, right? Something like, for example, VMware, has a VMDK. AWS will have an AMI. Azure will have something else. Google will have, of course, something else, right? Will there be a common format? The answer is no. I mean, it's too ideal. Why would people do it? Of course, for obvious commercial reasons, we'll never have a common format. But today, and it's not because I work with VMware, I'm saying this. I heard this even from a customer. He said that VMware today is a company which is like a glue across my multi-cloud strategy. And this customer is using both AWS and Azure, right? And like you pointed out, the formats are different. So, of course, you need a solid strategy. I'm not saying everything and anything has to be deployed on VMware only. You'll, of course, have a strategy which says, this new application I want to deploy on maybe, some stack on, EKS, AKS, or some Azure or, the native service. But VMware today, what it ensures is that your same VMDK format can run on AWS and Azure or GCP or Oracle, right? So that's the assurance which we are giving you. So we are acting kind of we are becoming the common operating system across the
Oh,
various
sir, we can't
providers.
hear you, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Until what time did you hear me? If you can please tell me.
No, I
Okay.
think I was able to hear you throughout. So maybe, Rudy, there was some other issue there, but I
Yeah.
was able to hear you.
Okay. So like what I said that, on the formats, if it's about virtual machine, I mean, the same problem which I spoke of, right? That's solvable today because, like I said, we've deployed this VCF construct across, hyperscalers. And like I said, a customer mentioned this to me, right? So you are like, an operating system across, for me, across this entire multi-cloud world, right? And like I said, of course, it's not as if everything is going to be deployed on VMware. You will have, some things run on native, but the large part of problem, at least, we are trying to solve.
Okay. Okay, so as we are running out of time, I think it's already past 4 o'clock. So I'll just ask one last question. It's again from Manish Parekh only. Is it correct to say that VCF is for containers and microservices? And if yes, it is, then what about traditional workloads?
I thought I answered that, but if you guys didn't hear me, yes, VCF is for both containers as well as the traditional VMs. Like I said before, no application is completely microservices built, right? Today, you'll see most of the efforts are for, I mean, not everything is microservices, right? You can't possibly have that. The data persistence layer, for example, the databases will be outside the realm of microservices, correct? So vsafe actually enables you that, right? So it gives you the ability to run both containers and the VMs on the same platform. B, the advantage that it provides tool sets for both, your developers as well as your IT operators, something in common to work on VCF, right? So developers can continue using what they used to do for building these microservices. Operators can continue to manage with their familiar interface of vCenter, right? So that's the benefit which VCF brings in. It can run both, the containers as well as traditional VMs.
Okay, great. So thanks a lot, Amol. I think with that, we'll end today's session. It's already past 4 o'clock, but I think it's been a fairly interactive session with some really good questions that have come in from the attendees. So I'd like to thank you for that wonderful session and taking us through, VMware Cloud Foundation. I'm sure the attendees also found it really, really useful. We will be sharing a recording of this webinar with everyone so that for the benefit of everyone in case you want to go through it again. And of course, feel free to write to us. You can send us any questions you may have. We'll be happy to, direct them to Amol and VMware team so that they could answer them for you.
Sure.
So once again, thank you very much, Amol.
Thank you, Anil. Thanks a lot. And it was a pleasure talking on this subject. And like you rightly mentioned, please do reach out to us. My email ID was mentioned, but if you don't have it, write to Anil or the CMR team, and they'll make sure that it comes back to us and we'll have it resolved. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And with that, we close the session. Have a wonderful day ahead and look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, respected speakers. Thank you, participants, for joining the webinar. Wish you all have a great evening ahead and requesting to please stay safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you.